pictures from the rod on the frame.
Yeah.
I mean,
Van's falling apart. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not exaggerating.
and then I understand now that the electric lift is not working. That has to be cranked manually or something, so.
Number 8 is no surprises to reduce the heating in public buildings to minimum levels, and especially during the non-business hours.
I have a comment that, you know, I got a email from one of our favored citizens associated with the gym the other night, and it was, according to the citizen, that was warm as hell down there. The door was open to ventilate the place, and I've noted that although I go home shivering and my feet ice cold in this room after a meeting, that when we get out to the corridor it's like an oven. And I know the problem is related to the equipment that we have and the controls that we have and so on and so forth. And I relate back to the discussion I had with the supervisor of buildings and grounds in Andover, and some of the things that they did with 2 and 3 year paybacks and investments, that, you know, it might be worthwhile getting some kind of an estimate, revamp the control system that's, you know, I mean, the thermostat out there, I think along the way some of this is all useless. Find out what it would cost, and maybe we could roll it into some savings. I know the Energy Committee is looking at the whole picture. You know, which brings up the other issue about the windows, and I think you had an estimate based on state bidding laws and project managers and all this stuff of $500,000, which is crazy, right? You know, when a window contractor could.
I think we should approach our state legislatures with that.
I've done that. I've taken it to the Secretary of.
I know there's a provision in the environmental bond bill that applies directly to town halls.
Mm-hmm.
And we could find the language.
Would you look into that?
I could talk to Representative Jones or Senator Tarr, find out what it is. But I know there's a provision in there expressly for town halls, the environmental bond bill. And
I bring this up, Greg, because in the process of trying to reduce the heat in the public buildings, you know how we do it here with a switch, on and off. I mean, you're going to have, you know, I assume that there's, I know in your office is a switch. I've seen a couple of floor heaters in a couple of spots. You know, it's just difficult to balance the heat in the building. So, I mean, obviously do what you can, but I think without some changes to the mechanics of the heating system.
You have to phase it in. You know, one section at a time.
That probably does make some sense.
Which just.
Did you close it on?
Oh yeah.
Is it just on or off?
Yeah.
No thermostat?
sweat more or sweat less?
Well, there's,
No, there are thermostats.
the problem is it's impossible to balance it, and some of the equipment is not working. I have to imagine.
Well, can we just, before we deal with that problem, it's more longer term. Can you just set a policy where it's a certain temperature during the day on these thermostats, then at a certain hour a day you reduce it to a certain temperature?
Absolutely.
Each thermostat, you assign someone that task. You go around in the morning, you go around in the evening, and adjust that thermostat. Because it is. You can go out in that hallway, and it's about 80 degrees out in that hallway.
Okay.
Number 9 is revisit the existing snow removal policies, establish a higher threshold for callback services. The potential savings are unknown. We don't know what the winter has before us. We do utilize the services of outside contractors. It is an expensive item, and this is something that obviously we would need to work with the Department of Public Works on, but the fact is snow removal is expensive. We're really at the mercy of the weather and when these storms occur.
I mean, it's clear, and that you know that it's a hard number to predict. It varies every year. At the same time, you know, we talked about more sand, less salt,
Absolutely.
as a savings. It could be that, you know, the side roads get plowed, and cleaned out, you know, in some time frame, and maybe, you know, we could adjust it so that, you know, it takes a little longer to get cleared out.
I had a conversation with Mr. Hanlon about it, and it's funny, he's been asked by neighboring communities to discuss with them how we've been able to maintain our roads in such a fine condition as compared to theirs, and you know, what additional costs are we incurring, and based upon the conversation with him, we're actually not incurring any additional costs per se, we're actually doing a better job of
we have
managing
less
the
snow.
storms better by treating the services before the snow flies, you know, based upon the forecast. Therefore, it requires less, and we're actually all done on cleaning up when the other guys are just starting. So it's a timing issue, and, you know, Mr. Hanlon informed me, is you know,
I don't.
we're not expending, we'd actually be
And he should
expending,
be-
we'd be actually expending more. If we undertook the practices of the other communities, it would cost us more money, and we wouldn't be having the
Well,
same level of service.
I know, I've
Yeah.
heard the same, you know, I've sat down with
I
them
tend to
too.
agree with him, so it's a
Well,
compelling argument.
This is what I have to say. I don't disbelieve Mr. Hamlin. He's an honorable guy, but I'd like to see that
I'd like to
in
help
front of me.
you.
And
Pat, what is
also,
that?
I think most of you gentlemen know the street I live on, and I can tell you that that street, the amount of times that's plowed in any given snowstorm is excessive. And it's a slight hill. It's a very small street. There's 2 homes, and it gets plowed constantly. I was amazed. I was concerned when I first moved to the street that I couldn't get out in a snowstorm. I'm happy that I'm able to, but I think it's excessive, and that's my street. So I think there's some measures that can be taken to reduce the level of service without impacting the community as a whole.
If I could, Bob?
Yes.
Please. I agree with Mr. O'Leary, because I wasn't part of that conversation, but I've heard the same thing, where we treat the roads, there's less ice, there's less snow, because a lot of it does melt away. I don't want to say I got a little scared, but when I heard we're gonna treat the secondary roads different than the main roads, you don't get any more secondary than Rock Street. And I want to be able to get out of there, and I'm sure I will be able to. I just.
You're a member of this board, Joe?
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, they plow me in. I just want to be clear that I'm not going to vote in favor of anything that's going to put public safety in jeopardy. I just can't do it. I mean, God forbid we decide not to plow a road, and we're all going to do it every 3 hours, and then, you know, we have children that walk in the winter, and I certainly don't want to create any type of a situation where a child is hit by a car because we didn't plow the road. That's going to be a tough one with me to cut back on snow removal.
I don't disagree that we shouldn't take a look at it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a great suggestion.
No, I'm not
Just
faulting you
relating
for
a
suggesting
conversation.
it.
we
I'm
were
just
having
throwing it,
the
I'm
other
just
day.
giving you
Yeah, right.
ideas.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Revisit, and you can listen to Dave's pitch too.
I have, related to that, I believe we plow one church, if not more, than one of the churches in town. And if so, do we charge for that service? We don't. So, that may be something in terms of snow plowing we have to, I think we should revisit. There may be an issue with St. Teresa's, maybe we get something, is there a cost that we pay to use St. Teresa's as a polling place?
No.
Or is that given to
No.
us?
That's given to us.
We pay nothing for that.
So it's 20.
Along the same lines, going off of snow plowing for a moment, but we have a voting public of about 9,000 registered voters in town. Is there a need for 3 polling places? I mean, I grew up in a community of 70,000 people, and my polling place was able to service that many people, 1 polling place. So, would there be any cost savings to do that?
Yeah, their answer might be that there's some cost savings. There's traffic and parking
Issues, yeah.
issues, you know, depending on where
Sure,
you're at.
but if
Yeah.
St. Teresa's doesn't cost us anything, it has a vast number of parking spots, both sides and in the rear, it would seem to be the place that could accommodate all the polling places. Instead of having here at Town Hall, there's limited parking here, obviously, and it's open. Same thing at the high school. I think we should take a look to see if it makes sense.
Well, the high school parking is worse, and traffic-wise is
No,
worse. Yeah. Oh,
That's what I'm saying, the high school, eliminate the high school and eliminate the polling place at Town Hall, do it all out of St. Teresa's. And it's a centralized spot in town. I would just like to see what the cost savings would be, so.
The town clerk, I think, had some figures associated with that.
The one
There were
argument,
issues
the
that
one
were-
argument I heard about that was related to not this community, but other communities complaining about having to vote in the church. Even though you're not voting in the church, you're voting in the function hall. So,
I'd still
no,
like to see
I
the
think
numbers up.
there's
I
some,
think it
there's
makes
clearly
sense.
some merit in
I'd put
doing
it,
something.
I've added actually on my list, I will speak with the town clerk about it. Number 10 would be to establish unpaid work furlough for municipal employees, and we'd be looking at Town Hall, the Senior Center, and the library. Presently, we're open for 248 days a year, so although I don't have a cost for you, it is a number that we should be able to come up with a daily rate for furlough and establish what that amount is. So it's although the number is not here, it's only due to the fact that the math has not been done yet. So we'll look and see what those costs will be.
I think that's a worthwhile effort to look into that, especially what may be coming first part of the year. Related to it, somewhat, would be, and also in terms of energy efficiency. Town Hall is open on Fridays, 5 hours?
Yes.
Would it
Are there
not-
any, what about recreational activities on Fridays, are there any?
Probably practices.
There probably are late in the day. Probably. Selectman Whiting, I'm sorry, I know you had a question.
What I was going to suggest or propose is that if we can do this, and I know I've looked at contracts and I didn't see any prohibition against doing this, but closing Town Hall on Friday, where it's only open for 5 hours. Extending hours 1 or 2 days a week, such as a Monday night makes sense because we're here every other Monday night. Extending hours so the public can get here after 4 or 5 o'clock. Most people work a full day. It's tough for them to get to Town Hall and do business. The Town Hall closing at 4:30, Monday through Thursday, and closing at 1 o'clock on Fridays. The benefit there is save energy costs. You can close your building down Thursday evening, reopen on Monday. You do that throughout the year. I mean, if you're talking about people using the gym down there, you just have access to the gym. No access to any of the rooms, and any meetings that have to be scheduled, we have the building open on Monday nights.
But then generally, there are no boards, committees, or commissions meeting on Friday night.
No, maybe
Right,
no.
I know, that's
Yeah,
why
so that's
I
like
asked
the-
the question. So it would only be
Well, it is
recreational activities.
Recreational activities, which we've been sensitive to over the years, and obviously it's just.
All right,
one of the
let's
six
move
buildings.
on, the hour is getting late.
The last cost-cutting suggestion that I had was concerning overtime in our public safety and public works departments by curtailing non-essential overtime related to training and filling of vacant shifts. We would need to work closely with the police, fire chiefs, and public works director, but I don't think any cost-cutting program or cost-saving program is really complete until you really look at that as being an opportunity. And I can't quantify what the dollars are, but it's certainly something that we should take a closer look at.
There's one area that, I've had a discussion with the police chief on this issue, and it gets back to details. And I'm not talking about flagmen, I'm talking about details that not necessarily are essential. There was a detail, and this, by the way, it wasn't a public works detail, so, I can understand, but there was some construction at the house across the street from me, namely dug a small trench that